Hello! In this video I will talk about how the ancient Egyptians imagined the afterlife. To begin with, I must say that all these ideas belong to the period of civilizations, and there is no date about what happened before. Scientists only assume how the ideas developed using the method of analogy. The story of the afterlife begins with death, a set moment from our point of view. But for the ancient Egyptians, everything is not so clear. The body of the deceased was turned into a mummy. The methods were different. From natural mummification, drying in the desert sands, to complex procedures when, as described by the Greek historian Herodotus, the entrails were removed, the body was smeared with balms, the second name of the process embalming, and then placed in salt for 70 days. Then the body were wrapped in strips of cloth, clay was applied to the face and painted. Imagine now such a classical animated mummy. The embalming process was supervised by the god Anubis. He was depicted as a black jackal, a wild dog, or a man with the head of a jackal or dog. In the previous video, I already said that such an image of the gods came from primitive totemism. Thus, the goddess Bastet was depicted with the head of a cat, Thoth a hippo, Sekhmet a lioness. This is called zoanthropomorphic. Anubis created the first mummy, and since then the creation of all mummies is his responsibility. He also monitored the correct placement of internal organs removed from the deceased. If the heart is returned to the mummy, then for the stomach, lungs, intestines and liver from the 3000 BC there are special vessels, canopic jaws. These are jaws symbolizing the children of the god Horus. I'll talk about him later and now about his sons. The lids of the vessels were made to resemble these gods. Amset, with the head of a man, kept the liver and was located at the southern wall. Hapi, with the head of a baboon, kept the lungs and stood near the north wall. Domutef, with the head of a jackal, stomach at the eastern wall. Kibixinuf, with the head of a falcon, intestines at the western wall. According to Herodotus, the ancient Egyptians extracted the brain with forceps through the nose and then threw it away as not a valuable organ. Each of the children of Horus also symbolized the four most important elements that remained after a person's death. Kibixinuf mummy, Hapi hat, Domutef Saul Ba, Amset Saul Ka. The ancient Egyptians believed that a person has several elements. In addition to the body Hat, which after death becomes a mummy Sah, there is a name Ren, a shadow Shund, a heart Ib, and three souls Ah, Ba, and Ka. Strictly speaking, these are not souls, but there is no more appropriate term, and this one is usually used. The fact of believing in the existence of several souls belonging to one person should not surprise you. In the video about primitive beliefs, I already talked about this. In ancient Egyptian religions, this idea was developed and concretized. Soul Ah, appeared when Anubis put his hands on a dead man and released it. This is the afterlife incarnation of a person who is one with the body, but after death goes to heaven and the body goes on the ground. Soul Ba is the life force that flew out of the body like a bird when death came. It lives in the grave but can inhabit animals or go to the afterlife to the deceased. The Ba must eat and drink, and for this, food and drink were left in the tomb. The gods also have Ba, their sacred animals, such as the crocodile at Sebek. And this is another idea of primitive totemism. Soul Ka is the most important part of a person, a double. It's appeared with birth, influence fate, and death happened at the moment when the Ka left the body. Ka was going to the afterlife. The Egyptians preserved the mummy that Ka was returning to and made a statue similar to the deceased. If it had all been destroyed, the doppelganger would have died. Not only food and drink were left in the tomb for Ka, but also things necessary for the afterlife. The most terrible execution was with the destruction of the body, when, for example, a person was given to be eaten by crocodiles, because it was the final death, without the possibility of getting into the other world. All these souls in the early periods belonged only the gods and pharaohs, and there were several of them. But later they became an integral part of all people. So Ka went to the afterlife, overcoming barriers and escaping the attack of monsters. It comes to the court of Osiris. Before continuing the journey of the soul, I will tell you about the god Osiris, one of the most important gods of the ancient Egypt and the ruler of the afterlife in the Middle and Late Kingdoms. At first, Osiris was the god of vegetation. According to legend, he ruled Egypt and his brother Set envied him. A classic story. I will add to this that Set had other reasons not to like his brother. Nephthys, the wife of Set, gave birth to Anubis from Osiris. In the last video, I told about the Aeneid of Heliopolis, where the god Ra gave birth to Shu and Tifnut, they gave birth to Geb and Nut, and those in turn gave birth to Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Set, the god of the desert, once gathered the conspirators and came to a feast with an elegant sarcophagus. He announced that he would give the sarcophagus to whoever it would fit. Imagine some noisy holiday, for example, a copyright New Year or Christmas. If one of the guests had come there with a coffin, even a very expensive and beautiful one, the guests would hardly have seriously tried it on. Everyone would have been unpleasantly shocked and dispersed in different directions, but the DJ would have turned on cheerful music to change the situation. But there was a different culture in ancient Egypt. The guests began to try on the sarcophagus with great enthusiasm. And of course, it did not suit anyone. When it was Osiris' turn, and he settled comfortably inside, the conspirators closed the lid, nailed it down, and threw the sarcophagus into the Nile. Isis, the wife of Osiris, found the body. Anubis embalmed him. It was the first mummy he made. But earlier, the wife got pregnant from her dead husband. There is another version that said cut up the body of Osiris and scattered it all over Egypt. Isis was looking for fragments. For a long time she could not find the last part, the sexual organ. But when she found it, she became pregnant. And please don't be surprised by this fact, because we are not talking about people, but about gods. Note that the idea of the Immaculate Conception originated in ancient Egypt. Isis gave birth to Horus. I have already told about his children who kept the internal organs of a dead person. When Horus grew up, of course, he decided to take back the throne that his uncle had occupied. During the fight, Horus was defeated at first, probably because of his youth and inexperience. That tore out his eye. But then the son of Osiris won. He took the eye, gave it to his father to swallow, and Osiris came to live. He did not want to remain a pharaoh on earth and transferred this right to his son. Osiris became the ruler of the afterlife. Osiris is a resurrecting and dying god, like all nature. He dies in autumn and comes to live in spring. He was depicted in green, the color of spring nature. But he dies in the earthly world and is resurrected for the afterlife. People hoped that after death they would also go to Osiris' world. I will tell you about the path of the soul to this world in the next video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Please like this video. If you find a mistake in my English, please write to me in the comments. Thank you for your attention.